I want to show you something that will change how you see the news. Over the past quarter century, we've watched the Middle East transform, but this was deliberate remaking. Systemic destruction disguised as moral crusades. From Damascus to Baghdad to Tripoli, leaders have been toppled, countries shattered, and entire regions consumed by militias and foreign troops. Each war was packaged as the noble fight against tyranny. But when you step back and see the full board, patterns emerge. These were moves on a game board. The questions we have to ask are who was playing and what was the real objective. The blueprint was written in 1996, a policy paper called A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. It laid out a plan to reshape the Middle East. The authors include Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, and David Wormser, names that would later occupy key positions in the Bush administration. Oh, and I forgot, Benjamin Netanyahu. Their vision was elegant in its simplicity. Remove secular Arab nationalist leaders who maintained independence from American and Israeli strategic objectives. Replace them with fragmented, weakened states that could never challenge regional power arrangements. This strategy targeted specific leaders: Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and implicitly any Arab leader who maintained strategic autonomy. Libya's Gaddafi wasn't mentioned by name, but his later fate followed the exact same pattern. I've studied this document extensively. What strikes me is its honesty about American and Israeli interests. No pretense about democracy or human rights, just cold calculation about power and regional control. Iraq, the first domino. Let me tell you about the Iraq you never saw. In the 1980s, UNICEF reported that Iraq had one of the highest literacy rates in the Arab world. The healthcare system functioned effectively. Religious minorities enjoyed legal protection under secular law. Saddam Hussein, yes, was a dictator, but his Ba'athist state was secular and centralized. It held the region's deep sectarian divisions in check through authoritarian control. Iraq was largely stable, educated, and economically independent. So here's what they didn't tell you about why Saddam had to go. He was moving to trade oil outside the US petrodollar system. In 2000, Iraq had begun selling oil for euros. Other oil producers watched with interest. If this spread, American financial hegemony would crumble. The 2003 invasion demolished more than a regime. It dismantled a functioning state, a country, a nation. The Iraqi army was dissolved overnight. The civil institutions collapsed, and the sectarian militias filled the volume. Al-Qaeda in Iraq emerged from the chaos, later metastasizing into ISIS. The reconstruction became a bonanza for connected contractors. Halliburton received no big contracts worth billions. Infrastructure that worked for decades was replaced with systems that failed within years. This was profitable failure by design. Libya, Gaddafi's golden thread. Muammar Gaddafi was easy to mock. The theatrical costumes, the rambling speeches, the bizarre public behavior. But beneath the spectacle lay a serious economic threat to Western financial control. Gaddafi's plan for the 2000s was revolutionary. He wanted to create a pan-European economic bloc with a gold-backed dinar as its currency. This would allow African nations to bypass the IMF, escape debt traps, and trade on their own terms. For a continent that had been systemically exploited for centuries, we can't lie, this represented genuine independence. The 2016 WikiLeaks release of Hillary Clinton's State Department emails revealed internal discussions about Gaddafi's monetary schemes. One email explicitly mentioned concerns about Libya's gold reserves and the potential for African currency. Libya, under Gaddafi, provided free healthcare, free education, and marriage grants for young couples. It maintained the highest UN Human Development Index in Africa as of 2010. The system was authoritarian but functional. Now, when NATO intervened in 2011 under humanitarian pretext, they shattered this system. Gaddafi was hunted down and killed in the most brutal manner. The country fractured into competing warlord territories. By 2017, CNN reporters were filming open-air slave markets operating in Tripoli. Medieval horrors resurrected out of the ashes of humanitarian freedom. This is the freedom we brought to Libya. Syria became the testing ground for a new kind of warfare. Operation Timber Sycamore, authorized by Obama in 2013, represented one of the largest covert operations since Afghanistan in the 1980s. The CIA funneled weapons to Syrian rebels through a complex network involving Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey. So, I've traced the money and weapons flows through leaked documents and investigative reporting. The operation cost American taxpayers over $1 billion annually. Gulf monarchies contributed billions more. The goal was removal within months. But the plan backfired. rebel groups splintered into factions. Weapons flowed to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Syria became a proxy battlefield of regional and global powers fighting through militias. Robert Fisk's reporting from Damascus revealed a surreal reality: a functioning government under siege, maintaining order in a shrinking territory while chaos consumed the periphery. The secular regime retained loyalty from Alawites, Christians, Druze, and other minorities who understood that jihadist victory meant doom. Russian intervention in 2015 changed everything. Putin's air power and Iranian ground support stabilized Assad's position. The king survived, so the game continues. But Syria lies in ruins. Egypt followed a different script, but still served the same strategic interests. Hosni Mubarak had maintained peace with Israel for 30 years, while keeping Egypt aligned with American regional interests. But his refusal to embrace economic liberalization and his occasional assertions of Egyptian independence made him expendable. The Arab Spring in Egypt received enthusiastic Western media coverage. Young people were demanding freedom and democracy, and that makes compelling television. But when the Muslim Brotherhood won elections, Western enthusiasm cooled rapidly. Coups received support. Sisi proved more reliable than the elected Islamists. So, the pattern repeats. Manage change that maintains essential Western interests while creating the appearance of supporting popular will. Sudan and the resource graph. Sudan's transformation followed economic rather than military logic. Omar al-Bashir's regime controlled significant oil reserves, gold deposits, and agricultural potential, which is more concerning for Western interests. What's more concerning was Sudan was deepening ties with China and Russia. The 2019 revolution that toppled Bashir appeared spontaneous, but it followed the same patterns: economic pressure, social media mobilization, and strategic foreign support, all combining to create a popular uprising. The military transition that followed ensured continued Western access to resources. The goal, just like the others, was preventing Sudan from becoming another Chinese client state in Africa. The method was ensuring political instability that prevents long-term strategic partnerships with rival powers. If anything, I want you to understand who benefits from this systemic destruction. It looks like defense contractors profiting from perpetual warfare, energy companies gaining access to previously protected resources, and financial institutions capture newly liberalized economies. The intellectual architects came from neoconservative think tanks: the Project for the New American Century, the American Enterprise Institute, and the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. They provided ideological justification for policies that serve concrete material interests. And there's one more. Regional allies played crucial roles.
Babysitter?
Israel benefited from the destruction of secular Arab nationalist threats. The strategy was elegant: use humanitarian rhetoric to justify intervention that served strategic interests. Democratic values became weapons against inconvenient leaders. Human rights became pretexts for regime change. The human toll of this grand strategy is staggering. Syria alone has produced over 6 million refugees. Iraq's death toll ranges from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million. Libya transformed from Africa's most developed state to a failed state, with open slave markets. So when you see refugees from these conflicts, they don't talk about freedom and democracy, they talk about losing everything. Homes, communities, security, dignity. They remember when life was predictable, when children could walk to school safely, when the future seemed possible. Sounds like just how we are now. Christianity in the Middle East faces extinction. Iraqi Christians who had lived in Mesopotamia since the Apostolic Age flee en masse. Syrian Christians huddle in government-controlled areas, and Egyptian Coups face increasing persecution. This is progress, according to the architects of these policies. This is democracy promotion. This is humanitarian intervention. Millions of lives destroyed to serve geopolitical objectives that most Americans never voted for and don't understand, let alone don't even know they're paying for. Gaddafi's prophecy. Before his death, Muammar Gaddafi made a chilling prediction. He warned that Libya's destruction would unleash a massive migration to Europe, that North Africa would become a launching pad for extremism, that the Mediterranean would become a graveyard. Every prediction came true. Libya became the primary transit route for African migration to Europe. ISIS established strongholds in Libyan territory, and the Mediterranean became a mass grave for desperate refugees fleeing the chaos we created. Not we, but them. European politics transformed as migration pressures fueled nationalist movement. Brexit, Alternative for Germany, Lega Nord, all grew from popular reaction to migration crises that stem from Middle Eastern interventions. This refugee crisis was made in Washington, implemented by NATO, and paid for by ordinary people who never chose these wars for the sake of foreign money and foreign nations. This pattern will continue because it serves interests that remain unchanged. Iran now faces maximum pressure and potential military action. Lebanon's economy collapses under sanctions and pressure, and Yemen starves under a blockade. Each crisis creates opportunities for intervention. Study these patterns because they reveal how power actually operates behind humanitarian rhetoric. The same people who promoted Iraq's liberation now advocate for a regime change in Iran. The same institutions that brought democracy to Libya now target other inconvenient governments. Understanding this game means recognizing that moral language often masks material interests. Humanitarian intervention serves humanitarian interests only by coincidence. Democracy promotion never succeeds because it's only to advance strategic objectives. So the Middle East was broken by design, not an accident. Each intervention followed the same pattern. Demonize the leader, arm the opposition, intervene militarily, and profit from reconstruction. Then move to the next target. Seeing through the next move. The game will continue with new targets and updated rhetoric. When you hear humanitarian concerns about China's Xinjiang, Iranian oppression, or Russian authoritarianism, ask yourself who's involved, who benefits from regime change, what would replacement look like? The playbook remains unchanged because it works. Public opinion can be manufactured through media campaigns, and humanitarian rhetoric neutralizes opposition. Economic pressure will continue, and then military intervention gives the final push. I want you to remember the millions who died in Iraq, the refugees flooding to Syria, the slaves sold in Libya's markets. Remember them when the next moral crusade begins, when the next tyrant must be stopped, when the next liberation is planned. Because the same people who brought you Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, Libya's humanitarian crisis, and Syria's democratic revolution are still in power. They're still planning and still convinced that breaking things creates better outcomes. The game never ends. It just finds new pieces to sacrifice. Pieces like you. The question is whether you'll see the next move before it's too late to matter. And always make sure to notice.